Go and see what happens. Let's just do it.
Go.
I'm in. Yeah.
Okay. So, hello everyone. So this is our much anticipated podcast with Sven Axelrad, and he's written this amazing book. But first of all, like a little bit of background, he's a friend of mine going back 20 years, and so we're just going to talk about this book basically. Like, we're not going to give away too many spoilers. Just like we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Like I don't know, we're going to cover a lot of stuff, like the style of writing, how he wrote it, how he got published, and we're also going to talk about like what was it? What else were we going to talk about?
Whatever comes up, this is where we get to.
Whatever comes up, exactly. And so I'm also a writer. I'm I'm an aspiring I'm a screenwriter. I do write as much as I can, and I think one of the main questions that I have in speaking to somebody who's been published is like, how do you do this? You know what I mean? And so I just wanted to connect with everybody as well, like to say, I know there's a lot of people out there who also are really like brilliant writers, and they aren't sure whether people are going to read their work, or maybe they care too much about what people think, or they don't care at all. And I think that's really what we're going to be talking about: is should you care about like what people think? Are you going to sort of like worry about what you should write, or actually just do what you feel is the right thing, and just be authentic in your art. And and so anyway, Sven, this is Sven Axelrad, everybody. The book is Buried Treasure, and this is his dog Zoe, who is also.
Sorry. She's sitting on my lap, and I'm a good Bond villain, stroking my dog. She's needy today, so she's just sitting with me. Yeah.
So cute, man. And so so this is an amazing, like, it's a dream come true. And I think for any writer, it's one of those things where you sort of think like, is anybody gonna read this? Are they gonna like it? Or did you go through that sort of was that a thing, or like
I went. I mean, it's that and a lot more than that. Like it's a dream come true, but also a bit of a curse. Like it's having a passion for writing is almost like an affliction. It's such a hard thing to bring in. To get published is so difficult. And I was trying for maybe 13 years before Buried Treasure got published. So it's not the first book I've written. It's actually the fifth book I've written. And okay, the first two are pretty bad. I would never show anyone anything about those. But from 3, 4, and 5, like they're all pretty cool. Like I thought all of them were the one, and the sort of amount of time that passes in rejection you have to field before your dream comes true is it's really difficult. And I think anyone that writes, I'm pretty sure that they've felt that same pain of rejection. It's that disappointment must be the worst of all the emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think writers are probably their own worst critics, and that fear can be so crippling, because I mean, one of the motivations to write for me is like somebody saying, you're so talented, like, you should do this, right? And then it's so good, like your self-esteem, you're like, oh, thank you.
But it's a terrible reason to write. Like this is one. So I got rejected so much for so many years that I actually wrote a list of reasons that why am I still doing this? And I sort of sat there and wrote a list of why am I still doing it. And that was on the list. People telling me I still hate it. I used to go somewhere and you meet people, and then I'm an accountant. I'd introduce myself as an accountant, and I'd always have that one friend that was really well-meaning, and they would say, but he writes books as well. And then the first question that comes back is always, oh, you published. And and then you'd have to explain that no, you're not published, but you came close 4 times, but it didn't work out, and you had an agent and you lost them, and so it's just a long story to try to convince someone that you were actually good at what you do. And I probably say that the coolest thing about being published is I don't have to tell that story anymore. I can just, I'll still introduce myself as an accountant, and then someone will say, oh, he has written a book. And then I'll say, are you published? And I can just say, yes. It's like such a relief not to have to tell this long story about how,
Wow, absolutely. But I mean, that's also the interesting thing is that you almost see it as like a stamp of approval. I've been published, like my work. It must mean my work is really good. But that's also the thing.
I don't think that's true as well, Tori. Like
yeah.
You said at the beginning, there's so many people that are really good that haven't been published. The publishing world is it's hit and miss. It's a business, and the best books don't always make money. And I'm not saying that. Yeah, it's a bit sad, right? But it is the truth as well. It's an industry, and just because you haven't been successful in the industry doesn't mean that what you've made isn't good. It might.
I think that's so important. Because, I mean, there are people who have poured their heart and soul into something, and it's not published, and it gets rejected. I mean, I think everybody knows that famous story of J.K. Rowling getting rejected so many times before actually being published, and now look at her, And I just think that you're so right that it's sort of like you actually just really have to believe. You have to believe that your work is good to be able to say, you know what, like if you don't publish this, somebody else will. And you're going to lose out on not publishing this because I believe it's that good.
Which is that we were talking earlier, and we were just saying every writer is like a weird mix of like crippling self-doubt and a weird kind of internal arrogance that you've got something special to add to the world, And I just bounce between the two. Even now that I'm published, I still bounce between the two constantly. In the space of editing Buried Treasure, my wife will attest to this. Like I would sometimes wake up and I'd show her, like I'd be working on the edits. It's like the 6th time I've read the book in a month, and I'll just look at her and I'll just be like, I'm amazing. Like this book is so funny and I've done so well. And then she would laugh. And then maybe a week later, I'm reading it for the 8th time now, and I'll just look at her and I'd say, I'm so useless. I don't know what I've made. It's absolute garbage. And you just constantly.
That's what is so amazing about art, right? Because I mean, I've started painting again recently. I painted years ago, like in high school. That was like what I did. Like I loved it back then. And my mom said to me, I don't know, it's just like I'm like, Mom, it's just because you're my mom that you think my paintings are so great. And I can see all the mistakes in them, you know what I mean? But she actually reminded me that that's the whole point of art. It's not, perfection is not it's not required. It's not required at all.
It's not very attractive either. Like perfection is I always thought, especially with music, I always thought like if you had a beautiful voice, it was almost like a handicap, because if you got a beautiful voice, you just sing a beautiful, beautiful song. You don't have to worry too much because everyone's impressed by the voice. But if you've got like a limitation, like Bob Dylan voice, Bob has to do something interesting to make up for his voice, and so he finds a way around it. And then like your art is basically where you hit your biggest restriction is probably where you should be. It's like you start playing around and finding a detour around your restriction, and then you make something cool and interesting, right?
I love that so much. Is there like any parts in your book that you feel that you sort of created like something amazing out of your restriction?
Yeah, the voice of the narrator in my book is a big factor, right? And that was a born restriction. I wrote everything before that in the first person because it was the only way to make my sense of humor come alive and for the narrative to work. And I really wanted to write for Buried Treasure, it's more of a book about life in its total form, and I wanted to write with a third-person narrator because I needed to have some distance from the main character so that you could observe them and comment on life.
Yeah, you went between the first person and then.
Yeah, because the first-person narrator he can only know what he knows, but whereas if we watch, then we can comment about it, right? And I tried writing third-person like that, and it was terrible, and I lost all the magic. I didn't have that, like, whatever made me special was gone. And so I found a cheat, which is the narrator. So if you think about it, the narrator is a third-person narrative, but he's got a character and he's very intrusive on the story. So he's basically first person. It's a first-person omniscient presence with a sense of humor and his own sort of quirks and commentary. And that was kind of the restriction that I came around with the new play.
Well, that's what I liked about it, was because while I was reading it, I was like, I totally get this guy. I was like, I know him also, and I know him. Like, it's like you feel so like he's talking straight to you, and like you're talking straight to me in the book, and I feel like we're kind of just chatting, and in that chatting, like all this stuff like grows out of it, and it's kind of freaking amazing. You're like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next? And at the same time, you feel like you're in the narrator's mind, like you feel like you're deep in their subconscious in this book, and there's some parts that I just wanted to. I mean, I mentioned earlier, my favorite part was the chapter on Augustine, and I don't know if I should read a little excerpt, but I mean, it was just so freaking beautiful. Like I was just so blown away.
I mean, should we give a little blurb on what the book's about? I suppose maybe people don't know it.
Yeah, let's give it a blurb. Yeah, tell them about what is it about.
Okay, yeah. Making a blurb of your novel is always a weird process, right? But basically, so the basic premise of this book is that you've got a fictional town named Vivo, which I sort of made up based on Durban and Lisbon and Madrid and all these places that I love. And it's got its own cemetery, and it's the guy that works there, his name's Mateus. He's a solitary man, and he lives with his only friend as his dog, that he's accidentally named God because he's dyslexic. And basically old Mateus's eyes are getting bad, and he's burying everybody in the wrong graves because, he can't read the registers. And it's causing a sort of administrative backlog to the afterlife, which is crazy, I know. But I think like if you maybe needed to go to Home Affairs to get a passport issued to go to heaven or wherever it is you're going to after you die. And it's causing a problem. So basically the book starts when he meets a young homeless girl and sort of brings her back to the cemetery to act as his apprentice and try and sort out the mess.
Yeah. As you were speaking, I was thinking like all these ideas were popping into my head. Which is the first one I'm going to say? Like, I'm just going to grab something. But it's really the perfect description of magic realism, right? Because it's magic in the mundane, like, and it could be, but not necessarily magic in the mundane. It's like magic in the what is actually weirdly what I thought was so common, much more common than you think. But the descriptions are quite graphic and sometimes quite shocking, and you kind of like, holy crap, that's intense. But then you think, but this is actually some people's reality. Like this is actually the reality. This is the mundane reality of some people.
Well, I mean, so the idea was to talk about life in its entirety, and obviously it sounds a bit macabre dealing with it in a cemetery, but I think it might have been Javier Moraes that said that it goes to sort of the perfect narrator for life because they've got some distance from it. Who better, like if in this interview, if you ask me how it's going right now, I'd say, I hope it's going well, I'm not sure. But then after the interview, I'll have some perspective on it and I'll be able to look back and go like, oh yeah, I should have said that maybe, or
right.
And then, so your ghost is basically able to comment on life and because they've gone through in its entirety. They can look at it after death and say, oh, these things weren't really important, but that was important. And, that kind of thing.
That's amazing. That also that I mean, I know you read a lot. You read like 65 books a year or something, but it's
Try, yeah.
amazing because you said that you actually put you didn't think about it. You wrote. I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of conceptualizing of how it would go, but as you
Yeah,
said,
look,
like the main bits, you obviously. I mean, like there's obviously editing and stuff, but when you write a book, you've got to get it done, right? Like, how long did it actually take you to write this? Like, that's something I
so
really think.
yeah, nuts and bolts of this one. This one's actually the first time I ever wrote on the clock.
Yeah.
So I've never written on a timeline before. You laugh at me. So like, being an accountant. I do. It's not like I'm not an accountant. Like I like to say I'm a novelist disguised as an accountant, but I am an accountant as well, and I like to keep spreadsheets. And like, this was the first time I'd ever written on a spreadsheet. So I literally had the weeks lined up, and I had to have a certain number of words done every day. Um, and I'd never done that before, never ever.
Wow, that helps,
And
obviously.
the project was 6 months. It was a 6-month project, which is the fastest I've ever written a book. Even since then, I've never written it that fast.
Wow,
But
it's
there was
amazing.
something special in this one. It sort of just like came out. I didn't have to force it.
Yeah,
Hopefully, you can tell in the writing that it's like pulled me along.
mm.
But I'd never done that before, and since then I've heard a lot of writers sort of go by the 500 words a day thing as a target because it's quite
Yeah.
achievable. That's kind of
Yeah.
what I do these days. I kind of wake up and 5 days a week I try to write 500 words, and if you write more, you write more. Some days I delete more words than I write. I write minus 500 words one day and 1,000 then. But I think it's just important to work at it consistently. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what you do, you know.
Yeah. That's absolutely amazing. Like we chatted a little bit about this, about how like one of my fears is um, when I'm writing, I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm kind of like, who's going to look at it? Like, who's going to publish it? Like, and that kind of stops me. I feel like I put my own stopper in front of me because I don't believe that anyone's going to like it, which is really, it's like a internal battle. I don't know if other writers or anybody's watching this feels the same way. Go ahead and comment and let me know, like, what are your fears? Like, what, like, stops you? But I think what you said was really encouraging because you just wrote it because you didn't give a damn anymore what anybody thought.
Well, it's like that's the upside to crippling failure, right? Like I'd been trying to get published for 13 years and and it just kept on getting disappointed. And then I think, to be honest, so 13 years and or a bit less than that, I'm probably like mildly depressed about the whole thing. And like actually that's when I sat down and thought, okay, I'm going to quit. And then I did quit. I quit for like 4 months. I didn't write anything. And then I realized that was dumb. Like I've got a weird setup. If I write and I get rejected, I feel depressed. If I don't write, then I just feel depressed because I need to have some kind of creative outlet. Otherwise, I can't function. And so I realized that I'd rather be depressed doing something than to be depressed not doing something. Right. That was kind of my turning point. I just sort of sat there and thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway, and I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And that's kind of when it turned around for me. Maybe 3 years after that, I got the call from Penguin to get published. They called me on my birthday, by the way. Like, yeah, there's a lady named Katriana. I always think of her as, I call her the patron saint of good news. She had no idea it was my birthday. I had forgotten that I'd submitted to Penguin because I was so used to getting rejected. I'd kind of forgotten. And she called me on my birthday in 2022 and told me that I was going to be published. So yeah, but I do think you should. Me personally, my approach is to try and not care too much about how it's going to be received. Just try and write what you want to write, something that you would enjoy reading. that's a personal thing. Like some people have an ideal reader in mind. Maybe it's their mom or their like best friend. But like for me personally, it's just what I would enjoy reading myself. You know?
And you just keep going at it. You don't give up. You keep submitting. It doesn't matter who says what about your book. Like as you said, somebody, I think you said you had a previous agent who said, who rejected it, just said who just didn't personally like it. I mean, so that's the thing, right? I think that's really the beautiful thing about this is that I think what people really need to realize is that not everybody's gonna like your work, just like not everyone's gonna like you, and that's okay. Just you can't end it all because
it's extremely subjective, and you can only control what you can control, I suppose, which is writing. And once you've written the thing, because that's your curse slash salvation is writing the thing. Once you've written, why not submit it? Even if it doesn't seem likely that it will make it out there, like you've done the work. It's not hard to submit something. You know what I mean? Like you might as well put it out there, and then move on to the next thing. And who knows? At some point, it took, like I said, it took me 5 books. To finally get there. I'm
just gonna actually put on my headphones because I can hear a little bit of a noise in the background. I don't know if it's rain or something.
Yeah, no worries.
Just don't want people to be like bummed about the sound. So I'm just gonna put in headphones. Okay, everyone, a little bit of a change there. Got the cans on. Anyways, it cuts out a little bit of the background noise. Sorry if it's been irritating people, but anyway, so that's it's a wonderful like realization actually that you just can't quit, like also that not that you would want to quit, right? Because if you're a writer, you're not gonna just want to quit. Like it's something that's in you. It's a part of you. You can't help yourself. Like that's how I feel about writing. Like it's such an outlet for me. I don't know. I can't not do it. It's just wonderful. I love putting together a character and making people go like, oh my God, and then what happened next? I really want them to say what happened next. Like that's the joy of it. And so I was a journalist for like 10 years and I was writing every day of my life, but it wasn't exactly the creative outlet that I imagined I would be doing. And that's the whole reason why I wrote short stories and I've got a bunch of short stories still and a bunch of book ideas that are sort of half done. But I think so you were saying about how you were kind of like eventually at this point where you were like, I've got to actually do this, And so you did the thing and you went and got published. You got organized, you did the book in 6 months and you actually got published. And so what was the like, so what if people are wondering out there, like what's the main thing that they need to do just to get published? Do they just stick with it and like, or how do they get an agent? Like is an agent?
So that'll depend on where you are. But if we're talking to South Africans in general, South Africa, you can submit manuscripts directly to publishers here most of the time. It means you can bypass an agent for a South African publication, which is quite helpful. But it's the same thing, pitching for an agent, pitching for a publisher. It's exactly the same kind of submission. You're putting together a cover sheet that tries to explain who you are and what your work is. And there's so much literature out there on how to do that stuff well. I don't have any golden ticket insight on how to do it. I'd follow all the rules. Just follow what the publisher asks for. But that's not really the stuff. That's kind of like spinning the wheel, and seeing what happens. The only thing you can really control is writing the best work that you can write.
Write a good story.
Write a good story. Love what you do. And then, unfortunately, this is very sad. I'd love to tell you that there's a secret thing you just have to do, and then you'll be published. But write a good story. Write it the best you can. Send it out there. once it's ready, and don't sit around and wait. Write another good story,
Yeah.
and send it out there when it's ready, and keep on doing that.
Yeah.
If you look at my stuff, because it was the fifth book that finally got published. Like I said, books 1 and 2, I wouldn't show anyone. That was me learning on the job. Books 3 and 4, I like a lot, and those ones I think will be published eventually. So if you think about it like that, then you're building up a body of work that really is. If you do make it into publishing, if you make it in on book 10, then you've got 9 books waiting that you don't have to stress about, and you can slowly publish those over time. Like nothing is wasted. Everything is valuable.
Nothing's wasted, right? Exactly. It's sort of like the stuff that you've written before that didn't get published that kind of sits on a pile of like literary compost, right? And it's sort of and you can sort of pick it out like later on and be like, maybe I can actually publish this. And you might like jazz it up a little bit or change a couple of aspects.
Got a weird thing. You know, I said I don't like the first 2 books that I wrote.
Yeah.
So I've got a weird thing that I've done since then, which is I've completely rewritten them. It's almost like I've made up some of the mistakes. So like now that I've been published, like the very first book I ever wrote was about a South African taxi war, and I just did such a bad job. When I look at it now, it's like cringe. I've never shown anyone. I've never even shown my wife that book. But since then,
that's intense.
Yeah, I wrote it when I was 21. I was studying my honors, and at night I would sit up and write. I was working full days at auditor. I would study honors at night, and then after that, I'd go for a run and I would write for half an hour, and then I'd fall asleep. And that book kept me alive, but it's very bad. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to tell a story. Like you basically do your job, right?
Yeah.
But since then, I've written that story again without reading the old one. I just completely took the idea and then used the way that I write now, that I know what I'm doing, sort of. And I used
more than what you did, definitely.
More than I did then. Yeah, I'm making new mistakes now. And I love it now. Like that, I've kind of made up for that mistake I made back then, and I've got it as a finished idea now.
That's so awesome. I mean, that's the whole thing about creativity, right? I mean, even with this podcast, I'm really learning as I go. Like, I'm sort of refining it and figuring things out as I go. And the whole thing is like, if you don't do it, you can't avoid not doing it. Imagine if you didn't do it and didn't make those mistakes and didn't learn how to do it better. You would just never do it, Yeah.
You've got to learn on the job. Everyone's good. You said like you've got a lot of half done ideas and that. With writing, and I find a lot of people have ideas, not half done, even just ideas, and they're waiting for some moment where they'll write the perfect idea. But you've got to. The only way to get good at it is to actually do it and make a bunch of mistakes. Yeah, it's like everything else.
I mean, I've sent out a bunch of scripts and like book proposals, script proposals. Nothing's gotten any response. But the point is that in doing it, I've learned so much. Like I've learned also how to get through self-doubt. I've learned how to get through the difficulty, the struggle of it. Because like in that, you learn like a single-mindedness, you learn like kind of focus of, well, I've got to push through, because if I don't show up every day for myself and keep on pushing through, like, I'm just never going to do it. And it becomes addictive, the learning as well. You're like, I've learned something in this like little round of like screw ups. I'm just going to do it again and just keep doing it until the way I see it is like, you're just going to break through the ceiling. You're going to just smash through the door somehow. At some point, you're going to break through that door. Like I've done before with when I was applying for a job that I really wanted at Eyewitness News many years ago. And I just kept applying for like 2 years. I was applying to work there because I just wanted to learn how to write. I just wanted to be a journalist. And then eventually I got in and I had no freaking clue what I was doing. Seriously, I don't even think I knew.
it was insane how clueless I was. I just want to tell everybody, you can Google
Yeah.
me now. You can read my work that I wrote for EWN, and you can see now like how good I got like after 2 years. But I want to tell people that I was absolute rubbish when I started. It's not even a joke. It's ridiculous. Like people were like, oh my
I mean,
God, I learned on the job. Yeah.
You're describing your job thing, you know, from the news, and then it's the same thing with writing we've just said, but it sounds like life as well, right? It's like
Yeah.
none of us know what we're doing, and we all make choices and try things, and then
Yeah.
you can't figure it out, right? Like, or you don't figure it out. It's one
That's
of the
the
two.
fun of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely going to get new like headphones because these headphones are so irritating. I just want to say, but that's one of those things that you learn because it's like one of those things that you grow with, you know, like you look at stuff that you did and you're like, okay, maybe I could do better. But like the more you do it, the less you feel like ridiculous about it because you're like, this is the process everybody's been through. Like even probably Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I mean, I'd love to see like the first drafts he ever wrote. It would make me feel a lot better about myself.
And I do think, I mean, that's, it is comforting hearing that everyone struggles with the thing, but it also isn't probably too helpful to compare yourself too much. Like, I've met a whole bunch of writers this year. Before this year, I honestly thought I was the only one in Durban. I thought the literary scene in Durban was me at a coffee shop, you know?
You feel so lonely. Yeah.
I was so lonely. In a literary sense, I was so lonely. And I've learned since then that there's thousands of writers, good writers too, in Durban.
Yeah.
It's not always helpful to figure out what other people's process is, you know, like you'll find maybe he got it right the first time, you know, like
maybe he did.
God. And then you're like, oh gosh, I'm not going to be like that. I've got a friend I've got a friend that's in Cape Town that he writes something like a couple thousand words a day, and I can write like I write the same amount in a week, you know, but that's the way I do it, you know, like there's nothing I can do. So we laugh, but you know, I let him do his thing and I do nothing.
What I loved about your book is feeling like I really know this guy because I mean, if you grow up in Durban, you know, people are so familiar to you. It's like a big family actually. There's a certain sense of humor people have in Durban that I really felt coming through in the book. And I was just like, this is so hilarious. And I know that all of our friends would read it and also be like, I get it. Like, this is so funny, you know? And, but then also like what makes that so unique about it is that I wonder how the international audience would look at it. They would think like, that's so unique and it's so different. That's coming from like somewhere I don't know, you know, kind of like how, is it, kind of how we see foreign books as well. It's a totally different culture. It's this unique thing suddenly. That's what I loved about it. It was so this subculture of Durban that was coming through in it that I think not a lot of people know. And it was beautifully packaged in the magic realism genre, which is my obsession. I freaking love magic realism. That's the style that I write in as well.
So like I've actually always been notorious. Before this, I was quite like worried to write about Durban. Like it felt, I wondered if I was going to, you know, being a white guy that lives in the suburbs, I was wondering if I was allowed to talk about Durban as a whole. And then I would wonder, again, about all the slang that we use and all, you know, whether or not it made sense to other people. And like, so when I wrote Buried Treasure, I actually didn't think it was very Durban at the time when I wrote it. I thought I was writing something that, because it's a made-up town, I thought it was relatively exotic. But almost everyone that reads it says they can really feel Durban in the pages of it. And afterwards, I look at it and I quite like it, that it is like that.
Yeah.
And since then, I've actually written about South Africa. As South Africa, I've written 2 South African books. And it's scary. It's scary writing about your hometown. It's like the stakes are high, you know, but it's quite fun too.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was also, and having like come from that sort of journalism background where I wrote about stuff that happened in the news that was so dark. And I don't think your novel is as dark as that, but there are dark moments where I think this is actually kind of real, you know. Like, but you sort of develop, especially as a South African, you kind of develop a sense of humor to get through. Are you there? Your screen's frozen a bit. Hello. Okay, he's back. Hey, you're back. No worries. It probably was my internet. I don't know. But
Africa.
yeah, so what I was saying is that South Africans have quite a dark sense of humor. You know, like in news, the stories were so traumatic that you know, every time a story came out that was really intense, you know, normally if you read the paper, you would cry a bit about something like that because it's so terrible. But if you hear that kind of thing in a newsroom every day, you're just like, it sounds sick, but you develop a bizarre sense of humor about it. Like, well, another this or this happened. I'm not even going to say it because it's terrible. And I think maybe, you know, what I thought about the book was that it was so almost like newsroom humor because it was, you have to have a sense of humor to get through something so intense. And I think probably people don't realize that in South Africa, you know, you have these pockets of like relative safety, you know, like in the suburbs where there's good security and stuff, but it's not far off from the townships where a lot of really hectic stuff happens. I mean, not even in the townships, but just, yeah. And so in a weird way, I could relate to it.
Yeah, yeah, it is interesting like that. Like I don't see us as so much having like a dark sense of humor. We're almost like hard-boiled optimists. Like
yeah.
You're not a true optimist if you don't see how bad things are and then still hope. You know, so I think as South Africans, we look around and we see a lot of how difficult life can be all around us, and then we still choose to hope. And I think that makes us something special. Like, I think it's a beautiful thing. And you try and, when you're talking about in the book and you're talking about life as it is, I think magical realism allows you to talk about really difficult parts of life and then tell the joke straight away afterwards, because life's like that. I mean, I was at a funeral not too long ago, and there was a lot of humor there, because it's not, people don't just walk around with a sad face on when sad things are happening. The tragedy almost inspires there to be a bit of levity every once in a while, and appropriately.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing to share that with people. In the dark times,
absolutely.
we'll be able to share like some light and some humor, even when it's
my dog is scratching at the door to get out. Just give me 1 second so I can let her out. I'll cut this part out. Hold on a sec. All right, I'm back. But yeah, it's like, so what are you saying? A hard-boiled optimism. Yeah, there's definitely like a ridiculous optimism about living in South Africa. Like, you know,
but
everything's going to be fine.
You know? Yeah,
realistic optimism.
Everything's not fun, but everything will be fun. You know.
Yeah.
Even when it's
what a
not.
Weird. Yeah, it's like a weird contradiction. Like when I lived in Spain for 2 years, actually, and then I lived in Madrid for 2 years, and it was one of the amazing things was realizing how calm people are, and how like they never worry about like anything like, you know, going terribly wrong. You know, they don't have like post-traumatic stress disorder from, you know, having like been mugged a couple of times or that kind of thing. And I just sort of was like, you know, it's so weird. I can't imagine growing up like that. How boring. I don't
True.
know. I
We're
don't.
saying we're about art, right? We're saying all of the bad things that happen in your life. It's a bad consolation prize, but if you're a creative, it's stuff for you to work through and work with, and like
Yeah.
maybe it's the same. Maybe the way we live in such a strange environment that even if you happen to be sort of doing well off here, you're still faced with reality of people every day that aren't doing well off, and you need to deal with that, and it creates a very interesting mindset, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, I think I pretty much asked everything I wanted to ask.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I think so. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I don't know. Like, I honestly wish I could tell people that I meet now. I mean, I'm meeting a lot of people that want to write, or when they want to write, I've got easy things to tell them. I'm like, just do it. Like, if you're writing,
Yeah,
and
you're right.
you've got those ideas, right, but you don't
Yeah.
have, you haven't started. I would just say, just start. It doesn't even matter like what you make.
Yeah.
Just make something. I think Vonnegut
Yeah.
said that. Like, make
Yeah.
something and throw it in the bin, and you've already got your reward.
Yeah, Kurt Vonnegut's so brilliant. Damn.
He is a curmudgeon-y
Slaughterhouse
old man.
5. Shit,
Yeah,
so
very
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it goes. But like, if you're thinking about writing and you haven't started yet, you need to just start. And you just don't write a novel, write a short story, because know this. Like, a novel's like a marathon, and you don't want to just learn on such a long project. I did that, and it was a mistake.
So true.
Just write a scene, write one character, write anything. It doesn't have to be a full story. And then
I
see what
totally
happens.
agree. Yeah. Focus on like short stories to hone your craft. That is the best advice I ever got. Actually, that's the reason why I felt confident enough to go ahead and write short stories, because you can just put it out on a page. You can just get it out, and it might not make sense in the beginning, but that's the awesome part, because you can go back to it and you can keep editing it until it does, and then it comes out like something absolutely amazing. And that's where you can learn like so many things, like twists and turns, right? Like you can add in elements of danger into a short story. You can add in like a sudden thing that people weren't expecting. And you sort of learn all these techniques that it's really, it feels like when you're writing a novel, a little bit insurmountable to
It does.
to work with such a huge scope of work.
Yeah, if you're learning to run, you wouldn't set out to run the Comrades. You would set out to run a 5K, because it makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so actually, in a weird way, because you read my short story, and then you made like a really good suggestion of a part that I could actually cut out and then incorporate it into the story in another way. And I was like, genius. Yeah, that makes total sense. And then also I realized that the cool thing about a short story is it can be the first chapter of a novel.
Yes, very
so
much.
You can actually add on to it.
Yeah. If you're interested in the characters enough or whatever, then this very chapter started on a short story.
Nice.
And it's not even a different, it took a different turn. But you look at my early notes, it was a short story. And then I sort of took the idea and played with it with something else. And it seems to evolve organically,
That's what's so nice about it, right? And that's also like, it's a huge hint for anyone like thinking of writing a book. Like, start with a short story and play with it and keep playing with it looking at it from different angles.
Yeah.
And probably before long, you'll have a book.
You've got to like trust your own instincts on these things. If you're interested, then it's interesting. Don't question it more than that. Like, if you find yourself wondering what's going to happen to this person, or you like the person, or you like, I tend to like my side characters more than the main thing. I tend to like find a side character really interesting, and then the story takes a turn because I want to find out about them.
I really liked the rat catcher.
Yeah, he's
He
just
made me
an
laugh.
yeah, he's cool.
Yeah.
The professor as well was like one of those side characters that I was really interested in.
Yeah, and in
Just
a weird way, like all of these characters are like different facets of one person almost because, well, I don't know if I'm just the only one who feels that way because there's so many. I feel like within me are these different sides of me that can come out at different, even like when you're talking to a different person, like different people bring out different sides in you. Like with some people, I swear a lot, and
yeah.
that's why I was like, oh my gosh, the rat catcher. I
I was
wonder
actually
why.
like a podcast. Are you allowed to swear in the podcast? I've been avoiding it just in case.
Oh, I think I have sworn before on the podcast. Yeah, it's fine. There's no, no. I mean, no. I don't think anybody is going to be like, I'm not going to watch this. She swears. In fact, I think probably if my audience really likes me, they'll probably swear as well. I hope that there's the kind of people that I could probably get along with. But I think I know most of the guys following, most of the people following. Hey everyone, thanks for following. Thanks for watching. Yeah. Yeah, so like I think yeah, I'm very excited now about writing my script because I've got some ideas and I've got like this motivation to keep going forward and to know that I think a lot of it is actually just believing in yourself and just being like, I'm just going to carry on going with this because this is what I'm good at. This is what I know I'm going to do and just keep going with it.
I think one last little bit of advice.
Yeah.
Something at this mistake. I'm just thinking of all the mistakes I made on the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing was writing something that was too long, and then the other thing was telling everybody about the idea before I was finished. So like I said earlier, I kind of like keeping secrets. Like I think a book is a secret or a short story is a secret until it's ready to be shown to someone. In that first one, I told everybody what I was doing, and then I told them what the idea was going to be, and all of a sudden, all of the expectation that I created for myself became like a weight I had to carry around, and then
wow,
it wasn't turning out as cool as I thought that I
yeah,
made it sound like it was going to be, and
yeah,
I think it was a big mistake. I think it's much better every time you want to tell someone, don't, and then that energy sort of turns inward. Pour that desire back into the story, and it'll make you keen to finish it so that you finally can show someone.
Yeah.
And I mean,
oh my gosh, I love that.